you know, in terms of making the projections for the 100% renewable energy future, whether it's by 2030 for city or 2040 for state or 2050 nationally, a reality, all that's needed is continued linear progression in the storage technology. No one's saying we're assuming something that is very different than what we have today. It's the same rate of progress that we've had, or a similar rate of progress to what we've had in storage technology will get us there. So it's still an if, right? I mean, there could be an exponential breakthrough that, my goodness, and makes it available sooner than we think, or there could be some slowdown. But I think basically trying to look at the near future based on extrapolating from the near past is probably the most reasonable way to go about the likely course for expected improvements in storage technology. Karen, who's watching online, says the single best climate action is talk about it. So I know that everybody here will be doing that, as will we. And we'll go to the next question from the room. We haven't had any move in this area. We'll go to the gentleman with the gray shirt there. Speak very close to the mic.
So Garrett mentioned in passing the idea of electric heat, which is something that I hadn't thought about. It caught my attention because, like most people, I probably have gas heat in my home. And we've always been told that gas was sort of less expensive and more efficient than electric heat from the overall energy perspective. But obviously gas is not carbon neutral. So I'm wondering about what you think about the impact of converting to electric heat, so electric heat for house, residential heating.
Let's take one more while back here. So electric heat conversion in houses. We'll take another question.
Well, this would be more of a policy statement. We put up the solar farms. We go down at this the airport down in Denver. There's a huge solar farm out there, but that's going over a lot of land. Germany's taking a different approach to a couple things like railroads and parking lots. What would be the complicated issue here as far as transmission is concerned? That's really distributed power. If we make a move to say houses or commercial buildings should have a certain percentage of their energy generated from solar, what would it take to get there?
So great question. So we'll do the one on, again, electrical and gas in homes, number one. And then two, distributed versus mid to large scale solar. Also looking at whether roads and parking lots are part of that mix as well. On either one, should we just, I think you all have something to say on one of those. So one was, these electric vehicles, by the way, even with a grid that's still powered by fossil fuels, even if your EV was powered through power from rawhide power plant, still far more efficient than an internal combustion engine. So the large scale coal facilities are still going to be, from a carbon perspective, more efficient than the least efficient distributed fossil fuels, which you could call an internal combustion engine. So the more that we can move to electric vehicles, as we, of course, green the grid, the better. The two are not mutually exclusive. They're frankly consistent. We'll go to the lady in the back there. I'll be right there. I feel like a talk show host here.
I just wonder what the mass transit plan is for along the I-25 corridor and how that would impact the transportation carbon footprint that we net.
Certainly, as we look at multimodal bus opportunities, there's also been talk of a front range rail along the 25 corridor rather than just lane expansion. Is anybody familiar with those, or do you want me to speak to it? Okay. Well, so I've been part of this discussion, and obviously we're trying to catch up with the public-private partnership and the lane expansion on North 25 already underway. Unfortunately, when you resort to public-private partnerships, which is a euphemism for toll roads these days, I always view that as a last resort rather than a first resort. But when you're unable to find any other money, that at least helps catch up with where you were. But as you try to figure out what the infrastructure package should look like, you need to look at the carbon footprint. You need transit plan communities. You need multimodal, both bike, bus, and then of course a very serious exploration of rail along the Front Range corridor. Because you're never going to, adding a lane, you're never going to get ahead of it. You'll barely catch up with where you were a few years later. You've really got to move people into more efficient means of transportation, actually saving the money, the reason it's a strong incentive to get there, and at the same time having significant climate benefit. Let's see, they're all on this side of the room, I don't know. Okay, well, here we go.
Thank you guys so much for being here today. We've talked a little bit about, quite a bit about carbon emissions. Nobody's really talked about methane and benzene and fracking and what it contributes carbon emissions in this area. Durango doesn't have any heavy industry, but I know that they have a terrible problem with the fracking industry there. And Scott Pruitt just indicated he was going to make it a methane bed, where they weren't going to be burning off the methane in that area, and so that's a very huge concern for us. And when we talk about the dirty air days, what does fracking contribute to that? Thank you.
I would add there's a glaring federal loophole on this. Fracking extraction is exempt from the federal clean air standards under the small site exception, also called the Halliburton exemption. So basically, because each site is small, it's rounded down to zero rather than looking at them in the aggregate. And guess what? You have 20,000 wells in a limited area, you can't run that down. I mean, that's actually the biggest local driver of poor air quality in areas of Wyoming with worse air quality than downtown Los Angeles in rush hour. Not because there's a lot of cars there, not because of their grid, but because of their extraction. So first of all, I sponsor a bill to remove the small site exemption. I've sponsored the last few sessions. We highlight that often on the floor. But at least from the federal piece, they should look at any type of emissions activity the same way, particularly when you have a lot of concentration of extraction activities in a particular area. We'll take two more that we'll do, and then we'll give our panel a chance to respond, and then we'll clean up one here, and then we'll go to the back there.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, panel. This is marvelous. I'm Ralph Trinidad. I'm a candidate for state senate. I'm looking at what can be done locally and at the state level. If not achieved in 2018, I'm going to be ready to do it in 2019. I have observed that a lot of good things have started in the state house but have died in the state senate. And so with an ambition to see some good work done, particularly in issues and topics and programs that you have all talked to us already, what's the golden ring that needs to be pulled, put in place, and hand to an agreeable governor that will sign it into law?
Okay. So a great question about kind of what those opportunities are, and we'll give our panel a chance to respond.
My name is Joe Sega. I'm a retired chemical engineer, and I've been doing research in renewable resources. One thing is, can we get cooperation here in the state between the electric utilities for energy storage and our water systems? We can pump water up when we have surplus energy and let it power turbines when we're low on energy.
So great questions. What can the state do? And I think the second question about storage and what storage capacity, additional storage capacities of energy do we have with our existing infrastructure? Is it realistic to upgrade water infrastructure to create more energy storage as well? Either one of those, the energy storage. Sorry, Coloradans and Americans on all walks of life and all ideologies truly do value our environment and our economy. And I think if there's any message from this forum today, not only do we not have to choose one or the other, but it is complementary to lead to greater economic growth by valuing our environment and our clean air. At both the state, local, federal level, international level, we must lead on reducing carbon emissions and combating climate change while creating jobs and growing a robust, sustainable economy. I want to thank all of you for joining us today and pressing forward on one of the most dangerous, scary, but vital issues that faces us today. Thank you for joining us.